I now look to Neil Carmichael, MP, for closing remarks in the opposition of the motion.
Well, good evening. It's absolutely great to be here. When I was a young lad up in Northumberland, one of the best lessons I ever learned was actually through reading Reader's Digest. And asked a simple question: who's the first person you look at when you look at a photograph? Answer: yourself. And I think it's a really important question to ask tonight. First of all, because we've been looking just at Britain. And there are other countries in this world, and there are other countries with similar sort of problems to the ones that we have had, and they may well generate those problems themselves. If you think about the whole of Europe, you know perfectly well there's been a history of racism in virtually every single country, and you can go far further than that. So it is a problem about racism, but we are doing much better than we did before, and that is a huge step in the right direction. So I would concede there is elements of racism in our society, but we must stamp it out. But I do suggest that things are much, much better than they were before. If I've been to South Korea, for example, you'd think Britain didn't exist, because every time I spoke to anybody in South Korea, they would basically say, well, where do you come from? And it's that kind of attitude we must get used to, because we are in a world where there are 190 nation states, each really competing with each other for economic, for political, for cultural superiority, if you like. But we were ones that effectively laid some of the foundations, but we are not as important as we seem to think that we are. And that has been characterized in this debate. So the first lesson to learn is we're not the most important. We are a great nation, but we're not the most important. The second thing about that story about Reader's Digest is that it's about actually understanding the value of other people. It's about showing interest in them. If you do, you'll learn a terrific amount. It's about effectively recognizing that you're not the most important person in the room. And that is about demonstrating self-respect, but respect for others. And it is that basic essence that will really defeat racism. Now, here I am looking at Ted Heath. I'm a pro-European conservative, and I have actually watched the video of him here back in 1975, articulating the reasons why Britain should be a powerful member of the European Union. His case was absolutely first class, because he pointed out how valuable it is to be part of an international structure. He pointed out how it's important to reach across the whole of society and make sure they are all included and all have their opportunities. And he pointed out that the political system itself has to be more inclusive. Those are the values that we have to stand by today, and they are the values that we have to think about tomorrow. It is the country we want to build. It is not the country we have just left. It's really important we understand that, because we'll never ever get it right if the only thing that we do is turn up stones and look for problems. Instead, what we've got to do is understand the kind of people we are, and we are inclusive. We are liberal Democrats in the sense of the word of our politics, not in the party politics that you've just been thinking of just then. We are also pluralist. We've got to fight for pluralism, because pluralism is under attack right now. And you know that because Donald Trump is not a pluralist. You can sense that from virtually every sentence he says. And you also know pluralism is under attack in the rest of Europe, but it's also under attack across the whole world right now. So if you want to stand up for people who do not want racism, then stand up for pluralism. Stand up for the individual in those pluralist groupings. Stand up for the rights of the person to be heard, to be seen, to be counted. That's what we do. And that's why we can make a difference as ourselves, as our society, as our community, as our political system. So it is really important that we embed ourselves with those issues. Now the key, yep?
The motion is this House-based British education perpetuates racism. You haven't really talked about British education.
Yes, I have. Because the whole thing about our society is recognizing that all of the time we learn. We learn about each other, we learn about ourselves, we learn about where we're going. But it is absolutely right that a more detailed analysis of our education system needs to be had. And I want to talk about the word perpetuate, because actually that's the key word in the motion. It's the motion that basically asks, are we doing better than we were doing before? Well, my answer to that question is yes, we are. We need to do better still, but we are doing better than before. And you all know that because you all know what Britain must have been like in the 50s or 60s. And we are staggeringly further forward than we were then. But of course, just
because the British education system is not as racist as it was then, that does not mean, in fact, that it could be perpetuated racism at the current moment. Do you not agree with that?
I would agree to you in point, because there are always ways in which we must improve our education system, and I want to talk about those right now. Because, of course, you know, I got the impression from the proposition that we had some sort of system that was well embedded for centuries. Actually, we only got round to introducing secondary education for everybody in 1944. Most European countries had done it a century before or sometime later, but certainly before the turn of that century. So we're not some kind of society which has had the benefit of an excellent education system for all of that time. In fact, what we've been doing is perpetuating an elite, but never actually reaching into the whole society, all of our people and all of our communities. Yep.
Wouldn't that be the definition of perpetuating racism? Perpetuating the elite?
No, it wouldn't. Because the truth of the matter is, we are talking about today. We are talking about the future. We are talking about the British society in the last few decades. At least that's how I'm defining the argument. And I will continue to define it in that way, because that is how we are going to best launch the future of Britain from this particular point. Now, where does our, yep?
So, given that your definition is basically a trend in the overall societal phenomenon, given the rise of xenophobic, racist, Islamophobic violence since Brexit, by your trend analysis, what do you say, therefore, British education has become increasingly failing to prevent such sort of racist violence from happening, and therefore not actually improving, as you posit on your side today?
I've conceded that we need to do better, but the one thing that we have to do, and it's absolutely clear, be more inclusive, more recognising of the values of individuals. That's what I'm saying, and we need to do more. And the education system needs to be adjusted to do that. And I'm going to set out 3 reasons why we can do that and how we can do it. Number 1 is give everybody the opportunity, the economic and social and cultural opportunity to actually enjoy this society, better themselves and do whatever they so wish. That's why the purpose of education has to be defined in terms of where people go and what opportunities they have. And that is the way of conquering racism. The second point I would make about our education system, and it has been touched upon by both sides, is that ignorance is the thing that really does the damage. And what we want in our society is exactly the opposite. A group of people who actually know and understand themselves and their fellow Britons. That is the key thing. It is actually recognising the value of other people. That was my starting point, and it's a really critical one. And the third thing that we've got to do as a society is make it very, very clear that we face challenges, and they are big challenges, but not ones I've actually heard in this room today. Because the real challenge we have is the one which is going to equip our young people to seize the economic opportunities that this country has now actually managed to exacerbate by leaving the European Union. Because we will find that it's going to be quite difficult to get the kind of skills, the kind of opportunities, and to deliver the kind of Britain that we really want, precisely because we have actually turned away from all of the things I said was absolutely imperative in Ted Heath's vision back in 1975. That internationalism, that sense of democracy, that sense of opportunity for individuals. That is how we will build a society. Those are the techniques that have been at the heart of our... Yes?
So if you're coming up with a freestyle
Yeah, I am articulating an argument. I'm deaf in my left ear, so you're going to have to excuse that. But I am articulating an argument which is basically, we can do better. We have improved the situation over racism. I can see that in our society. I go to schools and I see young people. And I'll tell you this. The most impressive thing about the referendum, and I wasn't much to be pleased for somebody like me who wanted to stay, but the one thing I noticed was that the younger you were, the more likely it was you'd vote to stay in the European Union. That's because young people know what is better. They know it's fair and decent to be part of an international society. They know and trust all of the different types of people they know they have met and experienced. And I think that is a signal, a very strong signal, that our education system is producing the kind of people who are open-minded, who are tolerant, who are ready to play a very important part in a liberal democracy, which has as its hallmarks pluralism, the ability to accept others, and the willingness to give individuals, wherever they are, from wherever they've come, the opportunities that they deserve. And that's the Britain we've got to fight for. That's the kind of society I want to live in, and that's the kind of society I hope to have in the future.